there, guys. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today's my birthday! And not only that, but I have a very special announcement. Oakwood Hollow's pilot episode has officially begun development! That's right, as of about, I think a month or two ago, I finished a script that I'm really happy with, and I already started a couple of shots. It's happening, Oakwood Hollow real, I say so, I'm the one making it. And because I'm so very excited to finally share a story that I've been working on for so long with all of you, and also as a little birthday treat for me, I'm going to strap you all down into a chair and yap about my weird spooky children and the world they live in. And I'm going to be showing you the process behind some of the concept art that I've made so far. Can I go to the bathroom? Anyway! This first batch of art is mostly concept art for the full series. I'm not committing to anything just yet with a lot of these, they're mostly just an excuse to freely experiment with what I want. If you've seen another video of mine where I talked about the short film I'm making, Dover and Calypso, don't worry, I'm still making that one too. This series and that film are my two main projects right now, and over the past few years or so, my hyperfixations have been switching between the two of them every 6 months or so. Whichever of those two projects I switch over to is what I focus the most energy on, and right now the worms have landed in Oakwood Hollow, and the voices have been screaming. I feel like it might be more likely that I'll finish the pilot episode for this series before my short film, but I don't want to make any promises for a specific timeline just yet. I've made a few videos featuring the characters of this show, and I talked about the story of Oakwood Hollow a couple times on the channel before, but that main video is about 2 years old at this point, and there's a few new aspects to the story, and there's a lot of new people watching the channel now. So for those of you who are new here or are in need of a refresher, Oakwood Hollow takes place in a universe that has all kinds of ghosts and monsters and cryptids running around. The titular Oakwood Hollow used to be a prosperous mining town in northern Pennsylvania, and it's now known for its ghost stories. These stories are mainly used for tourism, but unbeknownst to a lot of people, pretty much all of those ghost stories are true. The show follows a rebellious but kind-hearted teenage boy named Carlos and his friends who all have the sight, which is the ability to perceive and communicate with the dead. These kids all go around town using their abilities to help put the spirits who haunt the town to rest. I won't go too deep into the actual lore here, but as far as the tourism version of the town's lore goes, it was indeed an extremely prosperous mining town, specifically in terms of coal mining. One day not too long after Oakwood Hollow was founded and their position in the coal mining industry was established, a group of witches were run out of town and placed a curse on the Hollow on their way out before mysteriously disappearing shortly thereafter. As time went on, conditions in the mines started to worsen until a disastrous mining collapse trapped and killed everybody inside. Unbeknownst to the rest of the town, every single spirit of all the dead miners are still trapped down there, furious at both the people responsible for the conditions that led to their deaths and at the witches who caused the loss of their town's main economic source. And from that day on, per the witch's decree, any souls who died in the Hollow were cursed to never leave. Ooh, spooky! Except here's the bullshit with that. The mines are actually the least haunted place in the Hollow. And by that I mean there's been absolutely no credible evidence of ghostly activity in the actual tunnels. Most of the stories were made up by town officials to make the mine seem more spooky and mysterious, and I think the lack of evidence is at least partly to do with the fact that virtually all the tunnels are blocked off now, and they're no longer safe to operate in. If they want to hold ghost tours around the mines, the group mostly just has to wander around the rundown facilities and the abandoned quarry and point at things as they tell stories. But even the people who were bold enough or stupid enough to try and enter the tunnels get absolutely nothing until they're hit with a wall of rock. The mines are very uneventful is what I'm trying to say. But pretty much every other building or major area in town is haunted in one way or another. It's rare for Carlos and company to really go around town and not run into a spirit. Hell, even the convenience store is haunted. Every haunted place in town has some kind of story or urban legend tied to it. Some of those stories may or may not be entirely accurate, but that's what the freaks, as the townspeople call Carlos & Co., are there for. I feel like the townspeople have some mixed feelings about their home essentially being used as a tourist trap. A lot of people don't really like having their homes and businesses gawked at, and some of them certainly don't appreciate when crowds of complete strangers become inconvenient, and I think some of the ghosts probably feel the same way. On the other hand, some of the townspeople would see it as a sort of necessary evil, and town officials would definitely encourage it. Tourists bring money, and the town unfortunately relies on that tourism as their main source of income now that the mines are out of business, and there probably isn't much need for mine work anyway. And as some of you can probably imagine, not that many people like the idea of the freaks getting rid of the town's ghosts. Most of the citizens in Oakwood Hollow don't really believe the town is haunted, and the freaks are just kids playing a game, or more commonly, rowdy teenagers being weird and looking for attention. A lot of the adults in town are put off by them with some of the shenanigans they get into, and their classmates want as little to do with the creepy kids who talk to themselves and don't have any friends as possible. The freaks all more or less grew up with people thinking they were weird because of the things they were able to see, and they all thought they'd be alone. But their families do their best to make sure they're safe, and they know that they support them. Not to mention that when they all meet and become friends with each other, they take a bit of comfort in knowing that they aren't alone and that there are others like them who understand. Speaking of those kids, it's probably about time we get to the main characters of the show while I play a bunch of character art footage for them all. There are 4 core characters at the start of Season 1, and we meet 2 more who join the group sometime during, I think, the 2nd season. We'll get to those 2 in a bit, but the first characters we meet are Carlos Ryan Martinez, Maya Williams, and Ben and Andy Maxwell. Carlos is the protagonist of the series. We follow him throughout the entire story. He's a laid-back but rebellious teenager who grew up in Oakwood Hollow and has interacted with the spirits who haunt the place he calls home his entire life. Along with the ability to perceive the dead, he also has psychometry, which means he can gain insight on the past through touching something. Something like running his hand along a wall down a hall will give him an image of a person walking through it, or picking up a snow globe will show him an image of someone shaking it. His grandmother Sylvia also has psychic abilities like he does, so when I say he's familiar with the Hollow's haunts, I mean it. Like, so familiar that he's usually more annoyed with them than anything else. He doesn't go out of his way to provoke the spirits, of course, but most things that would be considered scary about ghosts, disembodied voices, things moving around on their own, or sudden chills in the air, would probably just tick him off if it happened around him. He'd see those things as the ghost being dramatic. In terms of who he is as a person, he's pretty sarcastic and he tends to goof off a lot. He's a very family-oriented person. He and his family are all very close. That's one of the bits of trauma TM that I wanted to spare my characters from. These kids' family groups all love them very much. Carlos even carries around his grandfather's baseball bat wherever he goes, despite never really getting to meet him before he passed away. He's never used that bat on a person, and he certainly never intends to. He just keeps it with him for safety in case he runs into a particularly nasty entity. Carlos has a bit of a short temper and has trouble controlling his emotions, and this has even resulted in getting him into fights growing up. But these fights virtually always stemmed from defending his friends or people who couldn't defend themselves from bullies. Carlos is an extremely protective person, especially when it comes to the people he cares about. The thing is, while Carlos might come across as a little intimidating, he's lonely. He doesn't really have that many people in his life who took the time to understand him, and it makes him extra protective of them. It also helps him appreciate the quality of the people that he has in his life, and more than anything, he loves being able to laugh and have a good time with them, and hold space for them all to just be themselves. Maya is the first person he meets other than his abuela, who has psychic abilities like he does, and she's his best, and for a long time, only friend. Maya is able to use remote viewing to receive visions of objects or places that were relevant to a spirit while they were still alive. So she'll probably see an object that was important to a spirit, like a piece of jewelry they used to wear, or a treasured childhood toy. She can also see somewhere like a bedroom they slept in or the last place they remember being in before they died. Carlos and Maya both grew up together, and she's pretty similar to Carlos with how laid back she is, but she usually tends to approach things a little more cautiously than Carlos does. She's generally pretty calm, and it can take a lot to set her off. Maya usually prefers to show how she's truly feeling a lot of the time, and she tries her best to be honest with her feelings, but I feel like she might have trouble being more honest about her more negative emotions. She works as a barista in her mom's coffee shop, and she'll usually host and perform open mic nights there. A lot of her hobbies are a mix of musical and creative. She likes singing and playing the ukulele, she makes playlists for hyper-specific situations and for others as a way of showing she cares about them, and she buys jewelry from independent artists and likes making her own. She also carries her sketchbook with her everywhere she goes so she can draw whenever she feels like it. She also usually uses her sketchbook to jot down visions she receives from a spirit to help map out what the group is looking for. I like to think those visions also made her very good at drawing backgrounds. And then there's the twins, Andy and Ben, who just moved to the Hollow from California at the start of the story with their mom to live with their aunt. First up is the younger of the two, Andy. Andy has some good old-fashioned dream abilities. A spirit can connect with her and channel a significant moment that led to their death or a significant moment in their lives through her. She's the main subject of the dreams, and the ghosts will send her what they can remember about significant events in their lives or the final moments before their death. She can also occasionally have dreams about things yet to come, although that one is a little more rare. Andy is pretty reserved, and they're very goal-oriented. She's a bit of a difficult person to get to know because she doesn't trust people easily. Like Carlos and Maya, Andy and her brother were both bullied a lot because of their ability to see ghosts, and it affected how Andy saw the people around her. They're a very serious, no-nonsense person who prefers to approach things logically with a well-thought-out plan. They're even a skeptic when it comes to ghosts, even though they can perceive them. In Andy's mind, it can be anything else in the world until she sees a ghost doing something with her own eyes. Despite their icy exterior, though, once she gets more comfortable with people, she reveals a more softer, empathetic side. Similar to Carlos, she really cares about the people who are close to her because not that many people take the time to get to know her. Also, despite being a walking, talking goth stereotype who can see ghosts, she's pretty much terrified of the entire spectrum of paranormal activity because she doesn't understand a lot of it. Andy is a very scientifically minded person, and the scientific community usually argues against the existence of ghosts. And they didn't exactly grow up in a haunted environment, so moving across the country to a haunted town is a shock to their system in more ways than one. But the more exposed she was to the dead over her life, and with some help from her brother, she's slowly learning to embrace the strange parts of her life. That's also why she dresses the way she does. It started off as her own way of easing herself into the weird stuff that goes on in her life, and it kind of just evolved into her own personal style. And that leads us to Ben, the older twin by about 17 minutes, according to him. His ability has more to do with the rule for the spirits in this universe. They aren't able to communicate clearly on their own anymore. A ghost might be able to make a few sounds or utter a few phrases here and there, maybe a menacing giggle or something, but they can't form a proper sentence on their own anymore. Ben can channel his spirit's energy through himself to restore that missing link of communication through vocalization. For those of you who watch ghost hunting content on YouTube, it's kind of like the Estes method, but with less steps, basically. Essentially, Ben is a human spirit box. Ben shares his role as the sort of brains of the group with his sister, but he's a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to the paranormal. He took to his abilities pretty quickly as a kid, and he was really fascinated by everything he was able to see. He had a hand in helping his sister Andy grow more comfortable with her own abilities growing up. Ben is a very loud and proud nerd. He's a firm believer in being true to himself no matter what anyone else thinks. In particular, he's very interested in all things spooky and unusual. He's a walking encyclopedia when it comes to horror movies, as well as cryptids, folklore from all around the world, and of course he's into the supernatural. He's super into tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons or Dread, especially the GMing and character creation aspects. He's also a fan of classic rock thanks to his dad showing some to him and Andy as kids. As a side note, Andy isn't as big of a fan of that genre of music, but I'm making it canon that they're a Pink Floyd fan. Ben is a very easily excitable person, and his brain tends to run faster than his mouth. That pretty much does it for the quote-unquote main four that we start the series off with. But by the time the second season rolls around, they get to know two more people who have the sight like they do, Naomi Yamada and Robin Santos. I think Naomi will probably be introduced first, but not as a main character. Whereas Robin joins the group right when the second season rolls around, right after the world of Oakwood Hollow is officially established. Robin is a newcomer to the Hollow, and I feel like it's pretty rare that a stranger with no previous connections to the Hollow would move there. But Robin and her family had their own reasons. Her dad chose to move their family there for a teaching job, and that teacher actually becomes a friend and ally to the cast. Robin was super excited to move to a new town and experience new things there. They're a very adventurous person, always seeking new thrills and challenges. They're very confident and competitive, and they roll around on their roller skates everywhere they go. Girly Pop has skates for feet and an absolute need for speed. She's a huge cheerleader when it comes to the people she cares about, and she's incredibly loyal to them and does everything she can to support them. In terms of his abilities, Robin's sight is a little different than everyone else's. Robin had to keep her sight a secret as a little kid, but it affected her abilities by the time she was a teenager. She can't see ghosts the same way that the rest of the characters with sight can. Where they can see a full-body apparition, Robin will probably see a very, very vague Persian-shaped blob or a shadow, if he can see anything at all. So instead, Robin can basically use every one of their senses other than sight to detect when a spirit is near, and even their nature. She'll feel chills or hot flashes if a ghost is malevolent, or a warm and comforting feeling when they're benevolent. If a ghost isn't making any noises that the rest of the group can hear, Robin might hear something like a TV static or a radio static that gives off their position. She'll be able to smell specific scents tied to a spirit, like a campfire or fresh laundry or a meal the ghost liked in life. Sometimes clues to a haunt can be deduced by things that you wouldn't be able to see in front of you, and Robin is particularly sensitive to these things, so I feel like she'd be a really useful asset when dealing with a haunt in that way. And last but certainly not least, that brings us to Naomi. Naomi has been a part of the Mean Girls crowd for a long time, but not necessarily by her own volition. Naomi comes from a very rich, very well-known family who's heavily involved in the Hollow's politics. Despite having abilities similar to Carlos and Maya's and the rest of the groups, she never really worked up the courage to introduce herself after seeing how the other kids treated them. Like Robin, Naomi also kept her abilities a secret growing up, but Naomi's reasons were more to fit in than anything else. It didn't help that her parents never really believed her when she tried to tell them about what she saw, and she essentially grew up hiding parts of herself to avoid being picked on, hence falling into the Mean Girls crowd. She eventually becomes close friends with Ben and joins the group through him in a way. Once she becomes more comfortable with people, she starts to relax and open up a lot more. She might seem quiet and reserved on the surface, but she's actually a really fun-loving, excitable person. She's pretty enthusiastic about learning new things, and she tends to get particularly excited when she's talking about or engaging with things she's really interested in. The reason she's so close with Ben is because of their shared interest in folklore, ghost stories, and things that are generally considered weird or nerdy. She's also a bookworm and an aspiring writer, and her favorite genre, both to read and write, are sci-fi and romance and fantasy. Her ability actually has something to do with dreams, similar to Andy. She can enter another person's dream and interact with it along with the other person. That way they can both get a look at what's really going on in the dream and interact with the person's head to decipher any hidden meanings or clues. There are a couple of rules to this, though. First of all, both Naomi and the other person, of course, need to be asleep. And second, and most importantly of all, Naomi needs the other person's explicit permission to enter their dream in the first place. I honestly don't think Naomi would want to enter a random sleeping person's head in the first place, both because she wouldn't want to do anything without their consent, and she definitely wouldn't want to see inside the head of someone who was, dangerous in some way. That does it for the main characters for now, but I want to take the last bit of the video to tell you guys about the pilot episode I'm making. The event that marks the beginning of the story and the plot I have for the pilot episode takes place on Carlos, Maya, Andy, and Ben's first day of their sophomore year of high school. A fight breaks out between them and some of the school's bullies, which results in the freaks getting detention, and they find out that there are ghosts hiding in the school. And Carlos and Maya didn't know these ghosts were there, despite spending their freshman year in the building. Shenanigans ensue, and the group tries to work together to solve the mystery of why the ghosts are haunting their school. As for how I'm going to make the episode, I'm actually planning on releasing it as an animatic. Not only is that the kind of work that I normally do on this channel and for a lot of my professional work, but that's what I feel like I'm best at. I like making actual animations, but I don't really have the funds to make a fully animated episode just yet. Plus, I've been seeing a couple other people releasing their own indie pilots as animatics. Projects like Pretty Please I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl, Lumi in the Great Big Sky, and most recently Strawberry Vampire are prime examples of indie animated pilots that were released in that format. Sometimes they'll have bits of fully animated scenes or rough animation, sometimes just the keyframes with a few in-betweens. Even the Lackadaisy pilot had bits of sketchy art and sneak peeks of some leftovers from the rough animation phase. I thought it was all so cool to include in the final product. Coming from my own extremely biased perspective as a storyboard artist, I think more indie creators should be releasing their pilots as animatics. I think it would be so cool to show more people the blueprints that go into animating something. A huge reason of why I love storyboarding so much is that I get to build something from the ground up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it still gives me an opportunity to add important details like layout, posing, and expression. Plus, it gives me an opportunity to show off what I can do with the characters' mannerisms and their relationship to other characters and the environment around them. Character acting is one of my favorite aspects of art and animation in general. If I were to get a quote-unquote real job in the industry, I think that's the kind of work I'd want to be doing. I'll say right now, the way I'm planning on making the pilot is very unorthodox since I'm choosing to take on the bulk of the artwork myself just because I want to. But I've been getting a lot of good advice and even offers from help from some of my friends who have a lot more experience with this kind of thing, which I am very grateful for. Thank you guys for that if any of you are watching, by the way. I really appreciate it. It's definitely a little intimidating because this is my first time really making a project like this, but the fact that this will eventually be a team project makes me feel a lot better about it. I do have a few ideas for how I want to go about making the episode, but I'm very much still trying to figure out a solid plan. It'll definitely be a bit before the pilot is finished. I don't expect it to take in any less than a year at the rate I'm going, and I'm still trying to save up some funds to help pay people for their time and work on top of that if I want to hire anybody else. I won't make any promises just yet, but what I am certain of is I'm enjoying what I'm doing so far. I'm very excited for the possibility of working with cool people on it, and I am so ready to finally get this whole project off the ground and share my weird kids in their creepy-ass hometown with everybody. I'll probably report back on the specifics once I'm a little further along in production and I have a more solid plan on how to go about this entire thing. In the meantime, though, I'll definitely still be making videos featuring these kids. I've been brainstorming ways to animate little moments with them lately, so that'll be a fun thing to look forward to. I'm also going to be sharing works in progress with you all every once in a while to keep track of how the episode is moving along. And if you want to see some exclusive art or some public posts early, maybe consider subscribing to my Patreon if you want. I don't know, you could do that if you want. I share a whole bunch of concept art and works in progress and early access posts over there, and memberships start at just $3 if any of you are interested in supporting my work. As always, thank you guys so very much for watching and for letting me talk about my kids. This is another project that I'm super excited to be working on and eventually sharing with you all. I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy the holiday season. I'll see you guys soon. In the meantime, I'm gonna go back to celebrating my birthday. Hey, where'd that guy go?